The huge crystal halls of the Galactic Council were filled with strange voices from hundreds of different worlds. The aliens were talking loudly about the newest species that wanted to join them. Earth delegates sat quietly in a corner waiting. For their turn, Ambassador Dae-ho Kim led the human group. He was an old diplomat who had worked many years to get ready for this day. The humans looked very small and weak next to the other aliens. The Valthax were huge creatures with skin like hogs. They stood twice as tall as any human. The Ryloth looked like giant snakes with shiny scales that reflected the bright lights above Council. Speaker Vex 9 was the strangest of all. It was made of pure energy, trapped inside a metal body that glowed with blue light. When it moved, the whole room felt electric. Vex 9 picked up the human application and started reading it out loud to everyone. The other aliens began to laugh when they heard about human weapons. Humans used simple guns that shot small pieces of metal. The bullets moved slowly compared to energy weapons that other species used. Human soldiers needed heavy armor and lots of supplies. The aliens thought this was very funny. What made them laugh the most were the human snipers. These were special soldiers who hid far away from battles. They would shoot enemies one at a time from great distances. The aliens could not understand why anyone would fight this way. Their own warriors charged into battle with powerful energy, weapons and personal shields. They healed quickly from wounds and were much stronger than humans. Young Lieutenant Tae Min Park sat in the viewing area watching everything happen. His heart felt heavy as he listened to the aliens make fun of his people. His grandfather had been a sniper in the old wars on Earth. The old man used to tell stories about impossible shots that won important battles. Those stories seemed like lies now, as the aliens laughed at human fighting methods. The Valthak representative stood up to speak. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. He explained how human bullets would bounce off Valthak skin without causing any damage. The Valthax had fought wars for thousands of years, and no primitive weapon had ever hurt them. Their rocky skin was harder than most metals. The Zephyrian delegate floated above her chair, surrounded by crackling energy. She described plasma weapons that could melt holes through starship armor. Human guns would be useless. Against such advanced technology, the Zephyrians could fly at incredible speeds, and their energy shields could stop any physical projectile. Next came the Chronari ambassador, who demonstrated his species' amazing healing abilities. He cut his own arm with a sharp blade, and within seconds the wound closed completely, leaving no scar. The Chronari could regenerate from almost any injury, making them nearly impossible to kill with conventional weapons. The insectoid hive mind representative was the most dismissive of all. Thousands of bug-like creatures spoke in perfect unison, explaining how their shared consciousness worked. If one insect was killed, 10 others would immediately take its place. They could coordinate attacks with perfect timing. Because they all shared the same mind, Ambassador Kim kept smiling politely, even as species after species mocked human military capabilities. He had expected this reaction. The humans had prepared for years, knowing they would be underestimated. The other aliens saw only primitive weapons and weak bodies. They did not see the intelligence and planning that made humans dangerous. What the aliens did not know was that humans had been watching them for 50 years. Earth scientists had intercepted alien broadcasts and studied their technology. They learned about alien biology and found weaknesses that the aliens did not even know they had. Human engineers had spent decades designing special weapons to exploit these weaknesses. In secret bases, hidden across Earth, the best marksmen from every country trained with new weapons. Sniper Hai Jin Lee practiced shooting at targets placed at different gravity levels. She learned how bullets would fly on worlds with heavier or lighter gravity. Then Earth Sergeant Dong Woo Choi studied alien anatomy charts, learning exactly where to aim to cause maximum damage. The aliens made their decision quickly and unanimously. Earth would be allowed to join as a tributary state. This meant humans would provide raw materials and cheap labor to the galaxy. In return, the stronger alien species would protect Earth from threats. Human military forces would only do simple support jobs while real warriors handled actual fighting. The human delegation signed the treaties without complaint. They agreed to limits on weapon development and restrictions on their space fleet size. The aliens were pleased with themselves for gaining new servants who would mine metals and grow food for the advanced civilizations. As the meeting ended, Lieutenant Park walked up to Ambassador Kim. He was frustrated and angry at how his species had been treated. The ambassador put a hand on the young man's shoulder and whispered something that would prove to be very important in the coming months. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake in judging humans. The aliens thought humans were weak because they fought from far away. They did not understand that precision and patience were actually strengths, not weaknesses. They would learn soon that the most dangerous hunter is often the one you never see coming. Human snipers had been underestimated, and that mistake would cost the galaxy dearly. The other species celebrated their new servants that night. They shared drinks and stories about how they would use human labor to make their lives easier. None of them suspected that they had just invited apex predators into their galactic community. The humans left quietly, making plans that would change everything in the galaxy forever. 6 months passed after Earth joined the Galactic Council. The humans received their first military job, the faraway Kepler. 442 star system had become a war zone. Council forces were fighting against the Marauder Coalition. These were bad alien groups that refused to follow galactic law. What started as a simple peacekeeping mission had turned into a long, bloody war that lasted 3 years. Commander Bo-Ra Shin arrived at Forward Operating Base Arcturus. She came in an old cargo ship leading the first human soldiers ever sent to fight aliens. The base commander was a huge Valthak named Gorthak Prime. He barely looked at the humans when they landed. To him, the 200 human soldiers were just more cannon fodder to throw at enemy guns when the real warriors needed rest. The humans got assigned to the worst fighting area on the front lines. It was a place full of rocky hills where enemy snipers had been killing council soldiers for months. 3 different alien military units had been sent to this sector before. All of them were completely wiped out within a few weeks. Gorthak Prime gave the humans a very short briefing. Hold your ground, call for help when things get bad, and try not to die too fast. Staff Sergeant Jin Wunam looked through his rifle scope at their new fighting positions. He noticed things that the previous commanders had missed. The Marauder snipers were skilled, but they always did the same things. They liked to shoot from high places and used energy weapons that made heat signatures. Most importantly, they had become too confident from months of easy kills against enemies who fought the same way they did. The Marauders expected their new enemies to charge forward with energy weapons blazing. Like all the others, instead the humans just disappeared into the rocky ground. Sniper teams led by specialist Kyung-Soo Park, and so young Kim found hiding spots that would have been impossible for bigger alien species. They moved through the terrain, like ghosts. The Valthaks were too big to fit in small spaces. The Ryloth snake people avoided dry areas because they needed moisture. The first Marauder alien never saw what killed him. Specialist Park fired his rifle from over 2 kilometers away. The bullet flew through the air and punched through the alien's energy shield like it was made of paper. The special bullet had been designed by human engineers. It had a uranium core wrapped in electromagnetic equipment that turned off energy defenses when it hit. The dead alien's friends looked everywhere for the shooter, but Park had already moved to a different hiding spot. The human bullet was unlike anything the Marauders had ever seen. Most galactic weapons used energy beams or plasma bolts that moved at the speed of light. Human bullets were physical objects that flew through space much slower, but they were also much harder to detect and stop. Energy shields that easily blocked plasma weapons were useless against solid metal projectiles, moving at high speed. Within a few hours, the Marauder snipers who had controlled this area for months started dying one by one. They were being killed by an enemy they could not see, could not predict, and could not fight back against. Their powerful energy weapons gave away their positions every time they shot. Their enhanced alien senses meant nothing against human soldiers who attacked from distances they had never imagined possible. For the first time since the war began, the Marauder advance in Sector 7 stopped completely. The alien commanders could not understand what was happening. Their best snipers were being eliminated by invisible enemies. The humans had turned the rocky battlefield into a hunting ground where they were the apex. Predators back at base headquarters, Gorthak Prime stared at his tactical displays in confusion. His throwaway human cannon fodder had not only survived their first day, but had actually stopped an enemy advance that had been unstoppable for months. He began to wonder if maybe the Galactic Council had made a mistake in how they judged these strange creatures from Earth. The Marauder Coalition leadership received reports of mysterious deaths among their elite sniper units. Nobody could explain how their most skilled warriors were being killed by an enemy that left no trace. Their energy weapon detectors found nothing. Their heat sensors showed no targets. The humans were fighting a completely different kind of war, and the galaxy was not ready for it. The fall of War Chief Brutek sent shockwaves through both Marauder and Council leadership, but their reactions could not have been more different. Marauder intelligence agencies started desperate investigations to understand this new threat, while Council military commanders finally began paying real attention to their human auxiliary forces. Ambassador Kim found himself getting requests for more human military units from sector commanders who had completely ignored Earth's existence just months before General Hae Won-yoon arrived at Forward Operating Base Arcturus on the first military transport ship ever sent, specifically for human forces. She brought with her 500 of Earth's most elite marksmen, each one trained in alien biology and equipped with weapons designed to exploit specific weaknesses in different species. The Valthak base commander, who had once dismissed humans as cannon fodder, now personally briefed the human general on strategic priorities across multiple star systems. The expansion of human military operations revealed just how completely the galaxy had misunderstood Earth capabilities. While other species focused on overwhelming firepower and direct confrontation, humans had developed a totally different approach to warfare. Human sniper teams began operating independently across dozens of star systems, hunting high-value targets with methodical precision that terrified enemy commanders. Lieutenant Colonel Young Ho Kim's team specialized in hunting, Ryloth leadership. The snake-like aliens had distributed nervous systems that made them very hard to kill with conventional weapons. But human engineers had developed special bullets that disrupted their nerve clusters faster than their regenerative abilities could compensate. Master Sergeant Soo-jin Park led operations against hive mind nodes, using tactics that isolated individual insects from their collective consciousness before eliminating them. Each human unit had essentially become a specialized weapon aimed at the specific biological weaknesses of different enemy species. The humans had studied alien anatomy for decades and knew exactly where to aim for maximum effect. They understood that the Chronari had a secondary heart that most species did not know about. They knew that Valthak armor had microscopic gaps near joint connections. They had identified the exact frequency needed to disrupt Zephyrian energy fields. What made human snipers truly dangerous was not just their individual skill, but their ability to coordinate and adapt in real time. While alien species relied on rigid command structures and predictable battle tactics, human teams operated with fluid independence that made them nearly impossible to counter. They shared intelligence instantly across vast distances using quantum communication devices. They adapted to new threats within hours instead of weeks. They continuously modified their equipment and techniques based on battlefield feedback. The Marauder Coalition found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything in their military experience. Traditional countermeasures proved completely useless against opponents who struck from ranges previously considered safe, using weapons that bypassed conventional defenses and then disappeared into terrain where other species could not follow. Their casualty rates among leadership began climbing exponentially as human sniper teams systematically eliminated their command structure. Council military analysts, finally taking human capabilities seriously, began studying Earth military history and discovered decades of innovation they had completely overlooked. The same species they had dismissed as primitive had actually developed the most sophisticated, long-range warfare capabilities in known space. These techniques had been refined through centuries of conflict on their harsh homeworld, where resources were limited and precision was essential for survival. The economic impact was staggering. Conflicts that had drained Council resources for years suddenly shifted dramatically in their favor. Military operations that should have taken months were being completed in days. Human sniper teams could eliminate key targets and cause entire enemy formations to collapse without the need for massive fleet engagements or costly ground invasions. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy began painting a picture that challenged every assumption about military power. Human forces representing less than 1% of total Council military strength were achieving strategic objectives that full battle fleets had failed to accomplish. Their success rate in target elimination missions approached 95% while their casualty rates remained. Virtually zero other alien species within the Council began requesting human military advisors and trying to purchase human-designed weapons. The Peaceful Trade Federation, which had maintained strict neutrality for centuries, quietly approached Earth about defensive cooperation agreements. Even longtime Council allies began modifying their military doctrines to incorporate long-range precision warfare concepts that humans had pioneered. What had started as a simple border conflict was evolving into a fundamental shift in galactic military balance. The same species that had been accepted as lowly tributary members were becoming the deciding factor in conflicts across known space. All because the galaxy had failed to understand that true power often came not from brute strength, but from precision applied at exactly the right moment in exactly the right place. The success of human sniper operations created a cascade effect throughout galactic military doctrine that nobody had seen coming. Species that had spent thousands of years developing energy weapons and regenerative defenses suddenly found themselves completely vulnerable to an enemy that operated outside their understanding of warfare. The strategic implications went far beyond the original Kepler 442 conflict, as military planners across the galaxy began questioning everything they thought. They knew about Combat Council Supreme Commander Thek 7 was the highest-ranking military officer in all of galactic space. He personally reviewed video footage of human operations with growing amazement and deep concern. Battles that should have taken months of grinding warfare were being decided in mere hours by sniper teams that eliminated key targets with surgical precision. The economic impact alone was staggering, as conflicts that had drained Council resources for years suddenly shifted decisively in their favor. The Marauder Coalition response was desperate and very telling. They began abandoning all traditional battle formations, keeping their leadership constantly moving and implementing total communication blackouts to prevent human intelligence gathering. Their most elite military units were reassigned from offensive operations to protection duty for high-ranking officials. The psychological impact was devastating, as their entire military philosophy proved completely inadequate against this new threat. Captain Min Jun Lee's team demonstrated the evolution of human tactics when they eliminated the entire command staff of the Scarrow 7th Legion in a single perfectly coordinated strike. 5 snipers positioned across a 10-kilometer radius fired simultaneously at targets who believed themselves protected by the most advanced defensive systems in all of Marauder space. The entire operation lasted less than 30 seconds and effectively removed a complete military division from the conflict without requiring a single additional shot. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy began painting a picture that fundamentally challenged every assumption about military power. Human forces, representing less than 1% of total Council military strength, were achieving strategic objectives that entire battle fleets had failed to accomplish. Their success rate in elimination missions had reached an incredible 98%, while their casualty rates remained at essentially zero. The broader implications became crystal clear when neutral species that had stayed out of galactic conflicts for centuries began requesting human military advisors and weapons technology. The Peaceful Trade Federation, which had maintained careful neutrality for over 1,000 years, quietly approached Earth about defensive cooperation agreements. Even species within the Council itself began modifying their basic military doctrines to incorporate long-range, precision warfare concepts that humans had pioneered. What had begun as a simple border conflict was rapidly evolving into a fundamental shift in galactic military balance. Power structures that had remained stable for millennia were suddenly in flux as smaller species realized they no longer needed to rely on the traditional galactic powers for protection. The humans had proven that intelligence and precision could overcome raw strength and advanced technology. The Marauder Coalition leadership held emergency meetings to discuss what they were now calling the human problem. Their greatest war chiefs were being eliminated faster than they could be replaced, Their most secure bases were being infiltrated by invisible enemies their best defensive systems could not detect. The morale of their warrior castes was collapsing as fear of human snipers spread throughout their forces. Council military academies began rushing to develop new curriculum based on human warfare techniques. Students, who had previously learned about massive fleet engagements and energy weapon tactics, were suddenly studying ballistic trajectories and camouflage techniques. The most requested courses became those taught by human military advisors sharing knowledge that had taken their species centuries to perfect. The transformation was not just military but economic as well. Earth's weapon manufacturers went from being completely ignored to having more orders than they could fill. Species that had previously refused to acknowledge human technology were now competing to license human weapon designs. The tribute payments that had once flowed from Earth to the Council reversed direction, as military services became humanity's most valuable export. Perhaps, most significantly, the galaxy's entire perception of humanity evolved from dismissive contempt to cautious respect. Species that had once seen humans as weak prey began treating them as apex predators who simply hunted differently than everyone else. Diplomatic negotiations took on completely new dynamics when participants knew that human snipers could be anywhere, watching, waiting, measuring distances that other species could not even perceive as threatening. The traditional galactic military hierarchy began collapsing as human sniper teams proved that individual skill and precision could accomplish more than massive armies equipped with the most advanced technology. Battles that had once required millions of soldiers and years of fighting were now being decided by small teams of humans who struck without warning from impossible distances. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson that would reshape military thinking for generations to come. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy was not the one charging toward you with weapons blazing, but the one you never saw coming until victory was already impossible. The humans had not just won battles, they had fundamentally redefined what warfare meant in the galactic Ageros. 7th Legion, in a single coordinated strike, 5 snipers, positioned across a 10-kilometer radius, fired simultaneously at targets who believed themselves protected by the most advanced defensive systems in Marauder space. The operation lasted less than 30 seconds and effectively removed an entire military division from the conflict without firing a single additional shot. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy began painting a picture that fundamentally challenged every assumption about military power. Human forces, representing less than 1% of total Council military strength, were achieving strategic objectives that full battle fleets had failed to accomplish. Their success rate in elimination missions approached 90%, while their casualty rates remained virtually zero. The broader implications became clear when neutral species began requesting human military advisors and equipment. The peaceful Trade Federation, which had maintained neutrality for centuries, quietly approached Earth about defensive cooperation. Even species within the Council began modifying their military doctrines to incorporate long-range precision warfare concepts that humans had pioneered. What had begun as a simple border conflict was evolving into a fundamental shift in galactic military balance. The same species that had been accepted as tributary members were becoming the deciding factor in conflicts across known space, all because the galaxy had failed to understand that true power often came not from strength, but from precision applied at the right moment. News about the human success spread fast through the galactic military network, but most alien commanders dismissed it as pure luck. One small area holding steady against Marauder attacks did not mean much in a war that covered multiple star systems. Commander Gorthak Prime was actually annoyed that his disposable human troops had not been destroyed as he expected. Now he had to keep sending them supplies instead of just writing them off as dead and asking for replacements. The real test came when Marauder intelligence figured out what was killing their snipers. They decided to respond with overwhelming force. War Chief Brutax arrived from the volcanic world of Scaros. He was a massive creature who stood almost 4 meters tall and brought his personal elite guard with him. He planned to personally deal with what he saw as a small annoying problem that was embarrassing: the Marauder Coalition. Brutax was a legend among his people. His species had natural armor plating harder than most starship hulls. They could regenerate from terrible wounds that would kill other aliens instantly. Their homeworld had gravity 3 times stronger than Earth, which made them incredibly strong and tough. War Chief Brutax had never lost a battle in 50 years of fighting across the galaxy. The War Chief made the same mistake that the Galactic Council had made earlier. He completely underestimated the humans. He set up his command post on the highest mountain peak in the region. This put him over 3 kilometers away from the nearest human position. He surrounded himself with his best warriors and activated military-grade energy shields, powered by a fusion reactor built into his personal armor. Brutax believed he was completely safe at such an extreme range. No species in the galaxy had weapons that could accurately hit targets at that distance. Even if somehow a projectile could travel that far, their energy shields and natural armor would easily stop any primitive human bullet. The War Chief felt so confident that he did not even bother with basic security procedures. Sniper Wu Jin Lee had been watching Brutax for 3 full days, learning everything about the alien war leader. He studied how Brutax moved when he would stand still and what parts of his armor might have weak spots. Lee calculated wind speed, air pressure, planetary rotation, and gravitational effects from the system's 2 moons. The shot he was planning would need to account for variables that no other species would even think about. The target area was incredibly small, less than 5 centimeters wide where the War Chief's helmet connected to his armor. Lee would need to hit that tiny spot from over 4 kilometers away while compensating for atmospheric conditions that changed every few seconds. It was the kind of shot that most species would declare completely impossible, even with their advanced technology. The bullet that killed War Chief Brutax was a masterpiece of human engineering. Combined with stolen alien technology, its core contained a quantum destabilizer that human scientists had reverse-engineered from captured Marauder equipment. The projectile had tiny thrusters that could adjust its flight path twice during the long journey to the target. When the bullet struck Brutax's helmet, the quantum field collapsed his energy shield from the inside, while the uranium penetrator punched through his natural armor like it was soft clay. The psychological shock of Brutax. Death hit the Marauder forces like an earthquake. Their most feared war leader had been killed by an invisible enemy from an impossible distance. The same warrior who had conquered entire star systems had been dropped by a single shot from a human soldier. He never saw warriors who had never known fear in their entire lives began looking over their shoulders and jumping at shadows. Within hours, entire Marauder battalions started abandoning positions they had held for months. They were terrified of an enemy they could not fight using any tactics they understood. The human snipers had accomplished something no Council military unit had managed in 3 years of brutal warfare. They had broken the legendary Marauder morale and fighting spirit. The death of War Chief Brutax became a turning point in the conflict. Human sniper teams were quickly reinforced with better equipment and more soldiers. They began systematically hunting down Marauder commanders, one impossible shot at a time. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that struck without warning, from distances they could not even measure accurately. Marauder coalition leadership went into panic mode for the first time in their history. They had built their reputation on being fearless warriors who could overcome any enemy through superior strength and technology. Now they faced opponents who made strength irrelevant by never getting close enough to fight directly. The humans had changed the rules of galactic warfare forever. 1 year after the first human sniper pulled his trigger in the Kepler 442 system, Ambassador Kim stood before the same Galactic Council that had once dismissed his species as harmless primitives. The massive crystalline halls echoed with very different conversations now as representatives who had mocked human military capabilities were competing desperately for access to Earth's specialized forces. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that humans had become the most requested military allies in all of Council space. The final Marauder stronghold fell when sniper elite Dong Hyun Park accomplished what an entire battle fleet had failed to achieve in 6 months of costly siege warfare. His single shot, penetrating 17 layers of energy shielding and advanced armor plating, eliminated arch-warlord Vecthos and caused the immediate surrender of 40,000 enemy troops. The shot became legendary across the galaxy, not just for its technical impossibility, but for its incredible strategic impact. Council military doctrine underwent complete restructuring. as commanders learned to integrate human precision capabilities with traditional overwhelming force tactics. The combination proved devastatingly effective, as human snipers eliminated enemy leadership while conventional forces dealt with demoralized and completely leaderless opposition. Conflict resolution times dropped by an amazing 70%, while casualty rates among Council forces plummeted to historic lows. The economic implications transformed Earth's position within the galactic community, literally overnight. Military consulting contracts flooded in from across known space, as species desperately sought to understand and counter the human approach to warfare. Earth's weapon manufacturers, once considered primitive and irrelevant, became primary suppliers to military forces that had previously ignored their existence. The tribute payments that had once flowed from Earth to the Council reversed direction as military services became humanity's most valuable and sought-after export. Perhaps most significantly, the entire galaxy's perception of humanity evolved from dismissive contempt to respectful caution mixed with genuine fear. Species that had once seen humans as weak prey began treating them as apex predators who simply hunted differently than anyone else had ever imagined possible. Diplomatic negotiations took on completely new dynamics when participants knew that human snipers could be positioned anywhere, watching waiting measuring distances that other species could not even perceive as potentially threatening. The Galactic Council's final recognition came in the form of a complete restructuring of Earth's membership status. The tributary restrictions were lifted immediately, weapons development limitations were completely removed, and humanity was granted full military autonomy. Within all Council space, Ambassador Kim accepted these dramatic changes with the same diplomatic grace he had shown during Earth's initial humiliation. But everyone present understood the complete transformation of power dynamics that had occurred. Young Lieutenant Park, now promoted to Major and serving as military attaché, reflected on how completely the galaxy had misunderstood his species. They had seen human preference for long-range engagement as cowardice, rather than tactical superiority. They had interpreted careful preparation and planning as weakness, rather than professional competence. They had mistaken patience for passivity, rather than recognizing it as the mark of apex predators who struck only when victory was absolutely certain. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would reshape military thinking for countless generations to come. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy was not the one charging toward you, with weapons blazing and energy shields crackling, but the one you never saw coming until it was already far too late. Earth's snipers had not just won a war, they had completely redefined what warfare meant in an age where precision mattered infinitely more than raw power and patience was the ultimate weapon. As the Council session concluded, representatives from dozens of species approached the human delegation with requests for military cooperation agreements, training programs, and weapon technology transfers. The same aliens who had laughed at human projectile weapons now desperately wanted to learn the secrets of long-range precision warfare. Ambassador Kim smiled politely as he fielded request after request, knowing that Earth held all the cards. Now the galaxy had made the mistake of underestimating humanity, and that error had cost them their monopoly on military power. Human snipers had proven that sometimes the hunter you never see coming is far more dangerous than the army you can see charging across the battlefield. The age of human military dominance had begun not through conquest or invasion, but through the simple demonstration that precision, intelligence, and patience were forces more powerful than any energy weapon or regenerative technology the galaxy had ever developed. The snipers had taken over not just battlefields but the entire strategic balance of galactic civilization forever.